Excellent. All right, it's working. All right, so welcome everybody. And let's go ahead. I'm going to share the screen. All right. Let's see. Can everybody still hear me? Yeah? Everybody can still hear me okay? Oh, good. Okay, thumbs up. Yes, the room says we can, but I don't want to neglect our. Oh, gosh. Okay. Here we go. So welcome everybody to the Big Valley Beekeepers Guild first meeting of the, well, no, technically not the first meeting, though we did a trial run last month. So in person. So everybody, woohoo! We're all excited. We're all excited. So just some reminders. Right now we're meeting both virtually and in person. We're going to see if this works. It's a little bit of work, a little bit of setup, but we're glad that you're here either way. Any updates about the guild? Well, obviously we're meeting in person and we're meeting at Julie and Raleigh's coffee shop. It's a great room. It's a little bit long for us, but it's a great, we're fitting and they're letting us use their Wi-Fi. So we're really excited and we get to eat. So we're happy. Oh yeah. So if you didn't see the announcement on Facebook, so we were interviewed for the Sandwichy magazine. There we go. And if you haven't seen it, definitely grab a couple extra copies if you can. The article is on page 58, which was kind of cool. So we were excited to get some more local exposure about the guild. So we're glad. Let's see. Thank you, of course, to Village Coffee Shop for letting us host here. And if you are a member, if you're not a member, for those that have come to a meeting, you can join our private Facebook page. So. All right. And we want to give a shout out and thank you to Mark Allen. Thank you for sponsoring this Zoom meeting. So thank you, everybody. Hi, you guys. Go ahead and have a seat. Check in anywhere you want. There you go. Good to see you. We really appreciate that. And if you know of anybody that wants to sponsor our meeting, it's only $15 to be a Zoom sponsor. And we will happily recognize you as well. So thank you so much. All right, so today we're going to talk about something called oxalid. I keep saying oxalid and adding a D to the end, but we're going to talk about oxalic acid and the three really more common ways that we use it. So what, Dave? That's a weed. It is, we're going to talk about that. So, but we have to give a disclaimer, and this is really important. So right now in the state of California, we actually do not have, how do we want to say that? It's not an authorized use of oxalic acid for treatment of bees. Technically, it's a wood bleach, and if we use it to maybe treat our boxes, there we go. It falls, and the bees just happen to be there. So, but we're going to go through some common ways that we treat our boxes with oxalic acid, and go through some demonstrations as well. So. All right, so that's what we're going to do. There's three main speakers tonight. There's myself. I'm going to be covering the sponges and the dribble and how to mix. We have Mark Allen and Paul Lockhart. They're both going to talk about some other spraying and dribble methods along with the vapor method too. So, all right. And we want to give special shout out and thank you to Randy Oliver from scientificbeekeeping.org. If there's any website that you should go to as a beekeeper, it should be this one, especially if you're new to beekeeping. It's a fantastic site and it has just a wealth of information. I use it as a reference guide. Anytime I need to look up something or go back, that's what I do is I go back to Randy's website. And heads up, Randy Oliver is actually going to be our guest speaker for our July meeting. So keep that on there. Yes, we're excited. Yeah, he's really cool. All right. So with that, I'm going to switch gears here with our slides. Let's see. Do we have any questions so far or questions in the chat room? Let's see. Thank you guys for posting your email addresses. I just want to keep track of you guys there. All right. Good deal. Let's see. I'm going to share our screen again. All right. Okay. Here we go. So oxalic acid. All right. Do we have any in here that are also on the virtual meeting by chance? Thank you, Dan. All right. I don't see Michael at all, but okay. I'm gonna watch the chat too. Let me just get this here. And make sure. Sorry, you guys, as we transition over to this, I'm gonna change my show. All right. All right. It's all those nuances of that PowerPoint. There we go. And then I just want to make sure that I have the chat available so we up so we can keep that going as well. All right. Perfect. That works. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that okay? And everybody can still hear me, right? All right, perfect. All right. So oxalic acid, can you guys see that okay? It's a little tough, huh? If you need to move closer, you're definitely welcome to. Okay. All right. So oxalic acid. What we know about oxalate is that it's actually a very good, I want to say it's a natural treatment, probably one of the most natural ones that you can get. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that acids are actually more toxic to the mites than the bees, and that's part of the reason why it works so well. And here's an example of all the different acids that that maybe they've compared it to. So they don't really know exactly why, I think at this point, about why the oxalic acid actually kills the varroa, but they think it has to do with how it's absorbed through their tarsal pads, just in case you're interested. And it's important, let's see, let me move the chat box over here. We go. There we go. Okay. So when you're going through and you're trying to determine, you know, if your colony actually needs to get treated or not, one of the worst things you can do is actually watch the bees. By the time you see something going on with your bees, it's probably too late at that point. So that's why you need to be proactive, right? So looking at this picture here, so what does everybody see? What's something that we see about some of the bees? Why is this colony about to collapse? Which one? The wings are deformed. That's right. So right there, if you see a bee that has wings that are already deformed like that, chances are it's too late. You haven't proactively cared for your bees and taken care of the mites. So what can we do to prevent this, right? Well, one of the things we can use, there we go. Oh, there we go. Or an alcohol test or anything else. Right. Just treat. So it's because there are some bees, some colonies. So just so that you guys in the virtual environment can hear the question, Nancy asked, well, if your bees already have mites and you already know that you need to be proactive about it, why don't you just treat? And really what the answer is that there are some colonies that don't have a mite problem. They have developed a resistance to mites. So really you don't want to treat unless you know there's a problem that you have mites that are beyond a certain threshold. So that's what you're aiming for. So, and you don't want to always treat with the same thing each time, right? You want to change it up. But luckily things like oxalic acid are things that you can use during the summertime. So for us, we always have a hard time of finding something to treat with that doesn't meet those temperature thresholds. So with the oxalic acid, we're able to actually continue treating throughout the summer. So we're going to talk about that too. So there we go. Sometimes treatments can be too strong. So that's why oxalic is also another option. And it doesn't appear to harm queens, which is extremely helpful. So just some words of safety, right? So we talked about oxalis in nature. So it actually is in a lot of the vegetables that we eat. So things like asparagus, broccoli, lettuce, sprouts. This is the actual chart that tells you how much oxalic acid is already naturally in these vegetables. And so, so here we go. We all have to eat our vegetables, Popeye or spinach. So do the bees. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so purchasing oxalic acid. So it's sold as a dihydrate. You can also find it as a, what? Oh, yes, this is what it can, as wood bleach. You guys can see that up there. Okay, so you buy it as a wood bleach, but it needs to have a certain concentration, I think is like a 96%. And I can't really see on here without my glasses, but you're going to want to purchase it. You might not need a big bag like what's on the screen, but you're looking for purity of 99.6%. Okay, and it's sold, and it needs to be the dihydrate. There's another version. Mark, do you remember what the other version is? Besides dihydrate, there's another one that you don't get. This is the right. It's okay. It's all right. Okay. So safety. So what do we need to do to be safe when it comes to using oxalic acid, right? So first of all, protect your eyes. It's an acid. You don't want acid in your eyes, no matter what. So protect your eyes. It tastes like strong lemonade, right? So there's Randy. Apparently Randy did. Apparently Randy did. So so it does taste like strong lemonade. The other thing is that you want to, whenever you're working with oxalic acid, you want to be able to have a neutralizer available. Luckily, something as simple as baking soda is a neutralizer. So they recommend, so there's 10 tablespoons in 1 gallon of water. This is what I carry. This is what I use to clean and wash my hands. Another tip is that Randy suggested was, he actually, before he puts his hands in his gloves, he dusts them with the baking soda, maybe as an extra preventative. The hard part about oxalic acid, though, is that you're not going to feel it right away if it starts burning you. It's going to take a little time. So just make your baking soda solution. That's probably the best thing. So mixing. But before we go into mixing, any questions in the chat so far? Thank you, Paul. Paul has posted some of the links as well. Any questions in the chat or in the virtual? No? All right. So mixing. Let's see here. All right. So I'm going to demonstrate kind of how I mix it. Before, let's see, just some quick reminders. So if you have hard water, you need to know that because that can affect it. And let's see. Oops. So make sure, because you don't, does anybody remember why we don't want to use hard water? It does. It does. So in order to mix it, I'm going to go ahead and just demonstrate this real quick with everybody. Hopefully you guys can still hear me and stuff. So I use the oxalic acid in 2 ways. But in order to mix it, I'm going to demonstrate using the baking soda, but I'm not really going to mix it. So we're just going to, well, yeah, I should. I know, I feel like a science experiment right now. All right, so to mix it, there's a couple things you're going to need. The recipes that are on Randy's website, you can make it with sugar water or glycerin. A lot of people are working towards using glycerin now. And the reason is that it ends up being a little more sticky, right? It stays on the bees a little bit longer. It's a little harder for them to clean off, but not by much. So you can purchase vegetable glycerin through Amazon, and it's food grade. So there you go. The other thing you're going to need is your oxalic acid, right? So make sure you have that. You're going to need gloves, right? Normally, I would probably wear a mask and have eye protection on as well, because again, it's an acid. So, all right. So gloves are very, very important. And then what happens is you're going to also need to have some kind of scale. So you're not going to measure by volume, you're going to measure by weight. So for the backyard beekeeper that doesn't have to mix as much maybe as like Mark does, We do it in small batches. The cool thing though is that you can also keep it in your refrigerator. Just mark it as poison though. It can last longer. But make sure you mark it as poison because again, it does taste like lemonade, right? You would not want to have that in your refrigerator to have somebody not know what that was. So basically I make sure you don't even have to use a stove. What I usually do if I'm mixing for my dribble, I'm going to use, let's see, and I think actually I might have it here. Let's see. Oh yeah. So if you guys look, this is the chart that has to do with the distilled water and the sugar, right? And the oxalic crystals. And then if you want to use a glycerin, this is the glycerin table. So what I normally do is I figure out I look at the total volume, and depending on the size of my container, that's how much I'll make. And I'm measuring. So I will typically take my beakers. I will, because the oxalic acid dissolves faster in warm water versus warm glycerin, I'll take the water, warm that up first, and then add the oxalic acid, stir it till it's dissolved, and then I add a warmed glycerin to get the mixture correct and to get it all mixed thoroughly. So that means weighing it out. That means I usually use a glass, if I'm making a small amount and I'm using it for dribble, I'm gonna make a small amount using a big glass measuring cup. I'm gonna use that to warm the water. I'm going to weigh out very carefully my oxalic acid or wood bleach, add it to that, then I'm going to stir, and then I'm gonna add my glycerin, and then it's done. So that part of it's pretty easy. Another method is to do the towel method, and we'll explain that in a minute. But that is actually the recipe that Randy is using currently is 1-to-1. So he's using basically if it's 1,000 mLs of oxalic acid to 1,000 mLs of glycerin. So, and that requires it to I guess, be heated on the stove because it takes a little longer to dissolve. So we'll talk about that. All right. Any questions so far about the recipes or anything? No? No? Okay. Any questions in the chat? Oh, yes. Brad says, always add acid to water, never water to acid. Yes. Old chemistry lesson, definitely. Okay. All right. Got it. And you can find all this information on Randy's website as well. Where you can go and you can find all the tables and the strengths. So those of you here in the room in person, how many of you have used oxalic acid before to treat? Okay, oh, there you go. And have you used the sugar water method or the glycerin method? Oh, the glycerin, okay. Sugar? Oh, the vapor. We'll talk about we got the vaporizers. All right, so we'll talk about that too. All right, so if you're mixing it to use it as a dribble or in the sponge method, then you're gonna do some mixing. Okay, so some additional tips. So oxalic acid crystals dissolve, of course, more readily in hot water than in a sugar solution. So you add your sugar later. You're going to make sure that the water's 150 degrees, but not more than 170 degrees. So that's really important, especially when you're mixing for the sponges. So no, you have to really watch it. And in fact, you could even use one of these, which is like it's one of those heat sensor things to tell you what the temperature is, because you don't want it to go over 170. All right, then you're gonna, once the oxalic crystals are fully dissolved, then that's when you're gonna stir in the sugar or the glycerin. All right. Oh, and we already talked about storage. So as I mentioned, it is a poison, right? So if you are gonna store it in the fridge, make sure that you mark it appropriately. So yes, it does keep longer if it's refrigerated, yes. Yeah. So, sorry? Oh, no. The mix, sorry. So just a question to those folks in the virtual environment. So the question was, do we really need to keep it in the fridge? And the answer is yes. The mixed solution You do want to keep in the fridge because it makes it last longer, but this doesn't need to be kept in the fridge. Your actual acid doesn't. Okay. Oh, okay. So the question is, does the solution freeze? I don't. That I don't know. Right. 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 Oh, and put it in the freezer. I'm just checking the chat. So good question. I don't think that they're, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would think probably it would change it somehow, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, so good question. And then did you have another question too? No, or you're good? Okay. All right. So application. So I think I'm going to go first and just talk about the dribble. And then Mark and Paul are going to come up and talk about the vapor method and stuff too. So, so for the dribble, let's see. And I'm just going to escape this real quick here. Okay, there we go. All right. Got it. All right, can you guys still hear okay in the chat or in the video? Yeah, okay, good deal. All right, so the dribble, once you have your solution, you're gonna use something like this, and it's one of those, it's like a beef syringe, or I don't know, it's like, I guess I could go ahead and open. Let's see. Anybody have a pocket knife on them? Oh, there we go. Okay. Here, you wanna cut that for me? Oh, good job, thank you. All right. So you can buy these on Amazon. You can buy them at Robinson's, Feed, wherever, but it's basically, it's what? Tractor Supply, yes. Oh, there you go. There we go. So you're going to, it goes up to, it's a 60 milliliter, basically syringe. So what you're going to do once you've mixed your dribble solution, right, which is, we had that chart on earlier, you're going to have it in your container. You're going to come out to the hives. You're going to make sure you have your gloves. And the recommendation is that you always have an extra set of gloves, because the worst thing is that you get the oxalic acid on your gloves, then you touch your hive tool, then you touch other things, and now you've been kind of contaminated. So, so you're going to take your fluid, and for one hive, it's basically 5 milliliters per frame, right? And if you look on the picture here, you see it has to be applied to the bees, but he's actually going in between each one of the frames. So he's not applying it to the top of the frame, but to each one of, like, in the middle between each frame. So very carefully, and maybe I'll come at it from this side, although I'm short. So I'm coming to the bees. Okay. Oops. Oh, good. I didn't need a hive tool. So the bees are there. I've got my liquid. And what I find is you have to be careful because you don't want it to spurt, kind of. But anyhow, you're just basically applying it between each one of the frames. And you're just watching, okay, am I getting 5, 5, 5? And then that's it, actually. So it really is a simple treatment. I think it's probably one of the easier ones because that's all I have to do. Then I'm going to just close up my hive. And we're done. So that's it, right? So once the hardest part of this process is actually making the solution, right? So that is why I always make extra. I keep it in the refrigerator. And because I know I'm going to use 6, and it's 60 milliliters, because that's 60 millimeters per box, milliliters. So if I have 2 boxes, do you think I need to treat both boxes? Yeah. So that's what happens. So then I know I'm going to need 60 milliliters times 2 to treat each one of the colonies if they have double deeps on them. Okay. All right. Yes. No. So, oh gosh, how do I answer that? most people do. What? I don't think there's an official answer, but I think a lot of beekeepers do tend to use it when they have honey supers on the hive, but it's something that I would recommend researching more. There we go. That's my generic answer. How's that? All right. Okay, good deal. All right. So again, 5 milliliters per seam. Seam is the word I was looking for earlier. And you're going to dribble it. You're not spraying it, right? So even with this picture, you can see somebody's using a sprayer, but they're dribbling it. They're not spraying it. Okay. All right. And of course, remember to hit both boxes. All right. So now we're going to switch over to vaporization. So who would like to talk about that first? Mark got pointed at. So I'm going to switch up my mic on here. You have to wear a mic. All right. Are you okay if I mic you? And there's extra stuff here so you can demonstrate how to do it. All right.
Go ahead.
Okay. Is it okay? All right. Let me try this side. Sorry. Trying to be very careful. All right. And then this can just go in your pocket.
Okay.
Just like
Looks like the audio dropped out.
all right.
Okay.
All right, test again.
All right, now we're trying again.
Can you guys ask them if they can hear you?
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's good enough. All right. I even brought PPE. PPE, personal protective equipment. Okay, so I brought mine, which is the more expensive option, just because I obviously had too much cash in my pocket and thought this was a good idea. But Pro Vape, so this is a vaporizer. And so they have everything from like the $100 version, which is just a stick with a heating element on the end, to one that looks like this. So it has a crucible, and it actually heats inside the crucible and shoots out a tube. And then an electronic display that actually regulates the temperature. So this one is a Pro Vape 110, so it actually plugs into the extension cord. If you have a truck that has the ability or a strong enough ability to use DC converter, I've seen them not work well with some converters are too weak, and they'll just basically cut off the electricity. So what it's doing is there's a heating element, and it's heating this crucible here, this big pot. You don't dump it in, you actually put it in this lid that feels plastic. It's more like, a heat absorbing type of polymer, right? It feels more plastic than ceramic on it. I always thought it was ceramic, but if you really feel it, you can actually scratch into it in plastic. So, and then this is just a brass type of thing. Anyway, so what you do is you take your spoonful of oxalic acid crystals, right? And a lot of people, you'll notice that the jar says wood bleach. So 100% or 99.99% oxalic acid, which will be in a crystal, is actually the same stuff you'd use for wood bleach, for cleaning up wood. So in it, the crystals are like a white crystal. They're not really a powder, more like a crystal. And then you have, generally what comes with mine, it already has it. the right sizing spoon, but it's a 1/4 teaspoon. And it's a 1/2 teaspoon, comes out to about the right amount of grams, right? 1/2 teaspoon is what you use if you have 2 supers or let's say 2 deep brood boxes, right? If you have just one, then you use a 1/4. So, and you don't have to do one then the other because it's going to make this big gas inside. And so you just put it into the centers. What is a neat way to do it is you get your hive. Let's see if I can stick myself here. And what you'll do is put some sort of hole in the side or in the back works best. So right where you have that lip for your bottom board, you drill a hole there, just big enough for this to move into. That way I don't have to mess with my hive when I do it each time I do it. That's if you have this type. And you plug up the front entrance, and you're only doing that for a very short amount of time. And then when I put the crystals into this lid, I trimp this over, and I push it on here. This will be hot as you can believe. The nice part about this display tells me when it gets to the right temperature. And then you stick it in the hive and turn it upside down. And you give it a good tap. You'll see the temp drop on this as it starts shooting out. It's immediate. It's kind of fun to do it not in the hive. And I was going to get a nice video of that, but I ran out of time because it looks like a flamethrower of just this white powdery gas looking stuff. So all that's happening is here, it's skipping the whole liquid process. It's going directly from a dry soluble, a dry powder, right, a crystal. So it's going from the solid phase directly to gas. And that's really what you want. So you'll see videos online that you want to stay away from where people are making some sort of weird concoction and then they have a vaporizer. That's not the same thing as sublimation, and that's what this is called. So sublimator, it takes heat and takes the crystal and moves it right to gas. And what it does in the hive is it moves all over all the surfaces of all the hive, including the bees themselves and the mites. That's the most important part. And then it actually recrystallizes. It makes a little tiny powder. So if you do too much of it, you'll have bees coming out that are all white. Don't ask me how I know that. So that's it. For this one, it goes down in temperature, starts climbing back up. And when it gets back to that temperature that it was at before, there's nothing left in there. And you can open it up and you'll see it's empty. So all the crystals are gone. And that's how you do it in a hive. Now, what's really important to notice is that even if you do the dribble or you do the gas or you use the other type of gas, this only works on the mites that you see or the mites that are in there. So the adult mites, we call them the phoretic mites. It won't work on any of the mites that are hidden either underneath royal jelly or that are in the capped brood. So you need to time an oxalic acid treatment and repeat applications to get that whole period. So if I was doing it, I would go every 4 or 5 days and I'd do it 5 times. That's just me. Everybody can do it differently. There actually is a pesticide label for oxalic acid, and that's what we're all actually following. So let's make sure that we follow that label. But you can find that online, and that has instructions on how to use oxalic acid, including vaporization. So you want to time that to the, just to repeat, you want to time so that you take every time those new hatches happen, that you're catching those new hatches before those adults that come out decide to go back into brood, because then you're missing all those and you're only getting a portion. So maybe you're knocking down a little bit, but you're not actually affecting much unless you're doing repeat applications and you don't miss that time period. So I'm going to go with Paul. You going to do more, Paul?
I guess, yeah.
Okay. If I can get it.
It's okay. Oh, yeah, there is. The camera's on there. Uh-oh. Here. Oh, no, I can't move that either. Jump really high. I need. Hold on, everybody. We're doing a guest speaker change. No, because it's going to mess up every, yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay. Thanks, everybody. That's all right. All right. Oh, here. Okay. Oop, oop. Oh, no, you're okay. All right. So while we switch things around, we're going to move some tables. Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm going to mic up Paul. Paul Lock. Here we go. All right. Excuse me. Touch your shirt. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Be careful. And then this goes just in your, just on your pocket very carefully. Don't touch that button. Yeah. There's a little clip right there. There you go.
Like that? Am I
All right,
set?
and then just ask everybody if they can hear you. All right. Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up or jump up and down or
Oh, yeah,
wave
we
your
got
hands in the air
thumbs up.
like you don't
Thank
care?
Thank you, Brad. Okay, you're all set.
Okay.
And there's different ones there to.
So another method of vaporization are these, for lack of a better term, wands. Where's the cow? Can you see the wands? You can see in the picture on the presentation, that's the Verox. I'm not sure who makes this one. Is this Sheree? Is this yours?
Oh, that's mine.
Okay. Well, basically they do the exact same thing. You're going to measure your dose of oxalic acid crystals. You're going to have your PPE on. The vapor coming out of these things is very, very nasty to your lungs. So you're going to put your oxalic acid inside the tray. And again, there's a couple different ways, different power sources. I think Sheree has this battery here. Is this what you use?
Yeah.
Okay. And
There's also, yes.
I have one of these that I use that I can tote around. I can plug in, recharge, air my tires up with. That's my preferred method. I don't know if you think that would work on yours, Mark? This,
It takes a lot of electricity.
yeah, a lot of amps. Something the clip broke off.
Oh, yeah. There you go. You can keep going. You're good.
Okay. All right. So anyway, you're going to put your oxalic acid crystals in the little tray. What do we?
Well, keep going.
And you're going to insert this into the opening on your hive.
There you go.
I usually take some wet towels, and once I get this inside the hive, I lay the wet towels
Oh,
across
good deal.
to seal off the entrance to keep the gas trapped, or the vapor trapped once you start vaporizing. In the case of the Verox, you put it in, you time it 2.5 to 3 minutes. The crystals are going to completely vaporize and or sublimate, and you keep the hive closed off. I think it's another 5 minutes total before you remove the wand. And then once you remove the wand, you close the hive back up for a total of 10 minutes for the treatment. When you get these, it's going to come with some instructions. So of course, read your instructions for your particular vaporizer. Thing you have to be careful about if you're doing multiple hives, when you pull this out, sometimes, there it is again. Sometimes they can still be hot. So the manufacturer for this one recommends you dip it in water to cool it off before you drop more crystals in, because if it's still warm and you drop the crystals in there, you're going to get that vapor, and it's not going to be good.
Does it hurt the bees' lungs? Bees breathing, or do they have lungs?
I don't think they have lungs.
They don't have
No.
lungs.
So there's I think it's called the threshold. The threshold for oxalic acid is, it doesn't hurt the bees, but it's deadly to the mites. But you want to look that up. But what's it, is that what it's called, the threshold? Where the
Safe threshold.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, that's why you only do it for a certain amount of time,
right,
right? What you're trying to get is that actual residue to actually cling to
Right.
all the surfaces.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, now the drawback to these, and I haven't had the problem, but I've seen people report that they've caught their hive on fire.
Oh my
They got it too hot. I don't know if they left it too long,
Wow.
but it caught the hive on fire and poof. You killed the mites, but you also took your entire hive out.
They already affected them.
Yeah.
100%.
Did I miss anything?
Let's see. Just no, I think so. I think that was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any
Why
questions?
do you prefer method over others, or do you prefer this method?
So if I have a real problem, this or the dribble is really good to knock them down fast. There's the other method, which I don't know if anybody's prepared to talk about, the towel, the extended release. Okay, all right. That's more of a extended release, a lot like this one it hits them hard and knocks them down, whereas the other one is more of a maintenance. Once you got control of the problem, you got the numbers kind of down low. What you're going to talk about, the extended release is yeah. Any questions?
Any questions for Paul? No? Any questions in the chat? Oh yeah, any chat?
They're just looking for some YouTube videos on it.
Oh.
You want to?
Oh yeah, talk about that.
So I have this little device I use for the dribble as well. You can get it at Tractor Supply, and it's got a setting on here for anywhere from 1 to 5 milliliters or milligrams, milliliters. And one pull of the trigger dispenses 5 milligrams, which is the dose you need per seam, and it holds 50, so you can get 10 treatments out of this. And I just find it faster. I just pull the trigger and go, pull the trigger and go.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
All right.
Right. Oh, you're good. Oh. All right. There we go. All right. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Okay. So the third method, well, kind of along with the dribble, or the third method is the extended release. And I just want to go back to the slides, and then I'll kind of show you a little bit about what what we did here. Let's see. So let me share my screen again. There it is. Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, I hope so. Oh, good. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. So we talked about the dribble. We talked, oh, hi. We have a visit from Raleigh. There you go. That's okay. Good to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, so we have, so here we go. Here's some pictures that talk about the vaporizer, just like what Paul and Mark talked about. Now that's a heavy duty one, and kind of similar to what Paul said, you know, you may end up with burnt plastic or wood with that one. So that's why sublimation may be easier. Oh, yes. Sure. We have a question.
Back it said that the battery powered one, it said may be helpful with quick onset of winter. Is that because of the liquid is not as effective, or the gas is better? If you back up a couple slides, the caption at the bottom says that it's more effective in a quick onset. One more right there. Nope.
Oh, one more.
Useful where winter comes on suddenly.
I think it might, maybe not in our environment.
Oh, okay.
We don't.
So you don't have to open the hive.
Right.
Your queen during winter sometimes, in a cold enough climate, will stop laying. And so there's no sealed brood, and all the mites are sporadic.
Mhm.
And, so it's more effective than taking the mite population down, is Mark, is that-
Is that probably true?
Winter, if you have actual winter temps, like we might get, like it's 30 degrees.
Yeah, you don't want to open.
You don't want to open it generally for liquid.
Liquid free.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Whereas
Okay,
vaporized.
that makes.
So what they're talking about, what they're asking a question of is if you use a dribble or the sublimation, then is there a chance when it's snowing outside, you're going to have issues? And it might be too cold to apply that type of liquid to your bees in the dead of winter. But luckily in the valley, we really don't have that issue. So, but that's one case where the vaporization might work actually better. So on this slide, we talk about the dribble versus sublimation. So the pros and the cons. I know for me, I'm not a fan of the vapor just because that was one of the first times I got stung when I was trying to put the wand in the front of the hive. But for me, the dribble is just super easy. I already have a mix. It's in the fridge when I need to treat. All I needed to do is pull it out the night before, and it makes it super easy, super simple. So on these slides, it talks about effect of the weekly treatment. And Mark touched on this as well, that when you treat with oxalic acid, because it does not kill the mites that are under the cap, what ends up happening is you have to time that. You have to treat them every week. You have to treat them on basically a consistent basis for at least, how many weeks do you think? At least 4 or 5 weeks? 4 or 5 treatments if you did it once a week? To catch all the mhm.
Yeah, I like to do that 20-day cycle.
Mhm.
You can look up what mites can go back into a new cell. They can come out of the cell and go back into it in as little as 5 days.
Oh, there we go. So in case you didn't hear that, a mite can go back into the cell in as little as 5 days
5 days. So that's like
to reproduce. To reproduce.
4 days is better than doing it at 5.
There we go.
Most,
Mhm.
or you're catching a lot.
Exactly.
Almost all, right?
So.
You can treat,
Mhm.
great, and then like an hour later, more mites come out, right? You don't catch those.
You don't catch,
So then
yeah,
from that
yeah.
Into your 4 days later,
Oh,
hopefully before they jump in, and then the cycle. Boy, I don't have the chart in front of me.
that's
but,
okay. Oh, the bee math.
Yeah,
The bee math.
When the new ones are gonna come out. Period of
21 days total.
The 21 days,
But
right?
4 days is the eggs that aren't going to count.
Right.
So you're,
Mhm.
so you're down to like what, 17?
Yeah.
So you can have 4 days to a treatment. So you cover the first 4 days. First one, and then you're going to do a second one and take you to 8 days. And you get 4 days free at the beginning, so you're already at 12 on your second treatment.
Mhm.
So the third treatment would take you to 16, and a fourth one would take you to 20.
There we
So
go.
you do 4 treatments at 4 days.
Before you count that first one.
So we're talking about the intervals, just so you guys know, and that it's if you do it every four days, then you would do that for 4 weeks, and that would likely get all of the reemerging mites that come along with the bees. There you go.
No treatment, 100% sure.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
hopefully getting 90%. So you're leaving 10% of the mites.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
behind.
You want 90 for, yes.
That goes to any pest management. You never did everything.
And here we go. So here's the kill rate. So this slide talks a little bit about that. Now, so the best windows, this slide talks about, this is from Randy Oliver's site. So the best treatment windows, this is for him up in the the foothills. That's all right. So for them, they are aiming for March and October, right? Middle of October. But for us, things are always a little bit earlier. So really possibly the February, and then possibly maybe beginning of October. And a lot of people here end up doing another oxalic acid treatment sometime during October sorry. No.
Left out a key part.
Oh, okay, hold on. Mark left out a key part. So,
Super key part.
okay, hold on. Let me hand him the mic. Okay.
I was fiddling around with the.
Here. Oh, you're doing that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try for this. Holy cow! All right.
Got it?
Can everyone hear me? It's the end of the day, so I don't think of everything.
Oh, yes. There's a thumbs up. Thank you.
Okay,
Brad.
cool.
Thank you, Brad. All right.
Thank you. So key part to this, and it goes along the line with what Cherie was talking about when she did her dribble, protective gear and everything like that. I talked about how I was going to do that and then didn't do it. So personal protective equipment, right? Gloves. Yeah, make sure the lid's on. That's one. Gloves. So these are actual chem application gloves. So if you have these, great. If not, then the thicker pair of just a latex or a nitrile, right? So you want to wear that because, again, you'll get some and then you'll feel that tingle. And by the time you feel the tingle, it's already burning your skin, you know. Tiny amounts, you can just wash your hands, you'll be fine, right? But the idea, that's something you should be doing. Always wear goggles if you're playing around with vapor, because this is going to go, just like on the bees, it's going off gassing and it's attaching, right, as a chemical. It's doing that in your eyeballs too. So you don't want that. So just goggles, best you can. I like goggles over just splash because it's more than a splash when you're doing a vapor. And then the most important, I mean, if you're not doing this, you're silly. You're just, your lungs are the way they are in your body for your lifetime. So when you mess them up, you get to have messed up lungs for the rest of your life. And that, you don't want to do that. So it's a really serious, believe it or not, as much as we're throwing this around and it's easy to use, super serious acid, right? So definitely wear a respirator while you do it. Piece of cake to get, but I will point out that these are different than the ones you get in your regular. These ones are in the paint aisle. So go to the paint aisle and get it. Because the ones that are in the aisle that you would buy glasses and whatnot, like you normally would, that's for doing demolition or doing little projects and that type of thing. They get dust and debris, you know, those type of things. They don't do chemical. And so if you go into the paint aisle and you look for the same thing, it'll actually say pesticide or chemical or organic acids. And that's the most important thing, right? Organic vapor, right? So that will be in that aisle if you can find a farm supply, right? An actual farm supply as opposed to just a feed store. Farm supply will have them too, probably cheaper. But Home Depot, it's in the paint aisle. And then they're not any more expensive. You just need to make sure it's the paint aisle when you get them. And then read the package you're getting. After that, I mean, you can be around, you can be inside this cloud of this stuff and be fine. Right? And as long as they fit on your face, and even, believe it or not, with all this nasty hair I've got, they do still fit snug. Those are the things I wanted to catch on. I just wanted to catch that real quick. So it's like the only time that you'll see me come, you know, all up in this gear and in a bee suit is when I'm doing this.
You may want to pay attention that if you're releasing this cloud of vapor, it's not drifting into your neighbor's open window.
Oh,
So
yeah.
you need to
Right.
watch out for secondary drifting.
I at least don't have to worry about that because my neighbor's window is like 1,000 feet away. So yeah, but yeah, that's to be expected too. So sorry, I had to jump in there. I'm like, what am I missing? I'm missing something. Yep.
Yes, safety first. Oh my gosh, thank you. Safety first always. All right. Okay. So we were talking about, let's see. We were talking about the other method. I'm looking at our time, the extended method, which has to do with the sponges. So I just want to show that example because I'm going to do this weekend. Hopefully you guys can see me okay. All right. So basically, Randy Oliver's been experimenting with something that lasted longer in the hive. So originally, it was dribble, then there was shop towels, then there was even DW was experimenting with straws, making straws. And the idea is they want the oxalic acid to stay longer in the hive. So he started experimenting with these kinds of sponges. And these are like, you can buy these online, again, on Amazon. But they're those European sponges that they're really thin, but you can use, they absorb like crazy. So Yes, it's like a sham wow. So what he's doing is, because it takes the bees longer, because it holds more of the solution, and because it takes longer for the bees, I guess they can't break it down as quickly, because we all know that the bees break it down really fast. The idea is to take these and let them soak in the oxalic acid. So so his method is, with the extended release, is to use the acid, and it's in 1-to-1 ratio, and it's just the vegetable glycerin and it's the oxalic acid. So I actually bought a bigger bag of oxalic acid that's about this size, because when you weigh out, these little jars only have like 450 grams, and you're going to need like 1,000 grams. So again, you're using your scale to measure, right? Or to weigh. Have your glycerin, and you're heating the glycerin on the stove, but again, it doesn't go over 170. It has to be below 170. So you have to watch it carefully, because it's the glycerin and things don't, it doesn't dissolve as quickly. So that's why you're having to do a little bit more stirring. Do not use an aluminum pot. Use a stainless steel pot. But you're mixing it, and then basically you find a container. In here you have all your straw, or not your straws, but your sponges. So this is one of these cut in half. And then you're basically pouring it over the sponges, and then you're letting it absorb overnight. With talking to like the El Dorado Club as well, so what ends up happening is that's still being perfected, right? So you're going to get some sponges that might have a little bit more than others, right? A little bit more of the solution than others, but you're aiming for about approximately 50 milliliters per sponge getting absorbed. And then once you have that, apparently if you let it absorb overnight, it tends to absorb more. Then the idea is to, again, you have your gloves, you have your equipment. I don't think I would use an respirator for this, but tongs, tongs and gloves. And then what you're doing, I'm going to take off this lid again. I guess I should have just left it before. Is you're basically placing, so once you have these, you're placing, he actually has been doing 2. So laying them in between the boxes. So there we go. Then if you have a second box, the second box just goes on top of that. And I think that, I don't know if he puts another 2 on top of the other one. But anyhow, long story short, these end up just staying there. You don't take them out, you just leave them there. And it takes longer because, again, the sponge absorbs more for it to dissipate, right? It's going to last longer in the hive than the shop towels. So that's the strategy. So ideally, you could put these on there and then be okay for at least through the period that you need to treat for. Because remember, the oxalic acid does not kill the mites under the cap. So this treats for that whole cycle. So you're not having to go in each time. So any questions? Any questions in the chat? Anything? Yes. Yeah.
Don't we have some little towel kind of things that are what?
Oh, Nancy's asking about Formic Pro. Yeah.
And that's for mites too.
It is.
So
It is.
how and why would we go through reinventing the wheel?
Mm-hmm.
Max temperature, you can use it as 85 for the label. So during summer, this can be used 385. That it's higher than 85 degrees.
Okay. What? Oh.
Formic is the best, but it can only be used for a short period of time.
Right.
Before you're going to end up doing more damage than good to your bees themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I know from experience.
But if you used it in the spring and the fall, would that suffice?
Sure, I kind of say I lose a queen because of it, and it's a little harsh, I can't make a new queen in fall, but I can make a new queen. Or I can find a new queen to buy in spring, I can't find a new queen in fall. And so that kind of leaves fall and summer out, and then winter, it won't work in winter. So it's a time period for me, that's just personal, everybody does things differently. It's spring. When it's not too cold and not too hot, so give me that time to clean that eye look, right? And then I move into my other program. It's not just oxalic, it's just one of them for me. And then there's also thyme oil of different types, right? But there's a paste for the strips. There's now hop guard, and it just goes on.
I want to make sure, because I don't know if the microphone was capturing. But basically, Nancy had asked about, well, why not use? Why do I keep calling you Nancy? Oh my gosh, I keep calling her Nancy, and it's Lynn. I know. I was like, oh, it's been so long since we've seen each other in person. Oh my gosh, Lynn, I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. I'm like, oh no. So what Lynn had asked about was, well, why not just, use something like Farmic Pro, which is strips. But the key is that it can be tough on the bees, and we're really restricted as to when we can use it during the year because of the temperatures. So people do typically use it in the spring or the fall, right? But this is a treatment that you can do during the summer months because there are no temperature or heat requirements. So that's good. So, yeah. Oh yes, we're gonna talk about that too. So Paul was saying that Randy recommends a pest integrated strategy. So that's what we're gonna look at too. So one of those might be a brood break. If you introduce a brood break, what does that do? It means that there's no brood for the mites to multiply in, right? We know that beekeepers in Italy actually can create an induced brood break during the summer. They do that automatically by caging the queen. But you can look at using that to your advantage and also using that along with your oxalic acid treatment as well. And here we go. So the queen can be caged for 12 days minimum. Then you can release her. You're going to treat 4 to 5 days later is usually the recommendation. Also, another good time is when you do walk-away splits, right? So that's another time when you can use your oxalic acid to your advantage. And then summertime treatment. So it can be used on severely mite-stressed colonies to buy you some time, because remember that you want to be able to reduce those mites down before the fall. You don't want your bees to go into the fall or winter months with a high mite count, okay, or high mite load. Because then you, yes, because then you don't have any bees in the spring. So basically, it is definitely, oxalic acid is more effective, the most effective when colonies are broodless. So use that to your advantage if you know you're going to go through a broodless period. After you do treat, it'll drop mites for about 4 days. And you can also combine the OA with requeening. Why do you think that? Why do you think it would work with requeening? Any guesses? Oh, well, because if you're requeening, it's another brood break, right? So, okay. So there you go. Kill the old queen, insert a queen cell, treat with OA 19 days later. There you go. Oops. All right. Again, cage the old queen for 2 weeks, then remove her, introduce a new queen, treat with OA 5 days later. And then treatment of nukes or packages, right? This is kind of a way to have a clean start, because you have, especially with a package of bees, they don't have any, they may come with some mites on them, but they don't have any that are already reproducing and multiplying in the frames because there's no capped brood. So again, perfect time to use the oxalic acid, because then you're killing the bees that are, right, that are on the bee, or killing the mites that are on the bees. There you go. Okay. So let's see, I'm going to go through just a few of his slides. So again, effective treatment once every 3 weeks. And then here we go. Here's where they talked, Randy talks about the Glycerin Board. So before he got to the sponges, he was trying other things like cardboard. but he found that the bees tore it apart too quickly, and it didn't hold enough of the oxalic acid. So the sponges have worked really well. Oh yes,
Do they remove the sponges themselves, or
they.
do you go back in later?
You can go in, but we're talking like 2 months later. Like you don't have to go back in 4 weeks later. You can leave them in there, and if you didn't get to them until weeks later, that's totally okay.
They'll just stay in there.
They'll just stay in there.
Right after.
They're not going to.
Eventually, you'll have to remove
Yes.
It's too much
Yes.
for them to-
It's a little too much of a material. It would have to be in there like, I don't know, a year or something. Yeah. So that's why it's a great summer treatment, because in the summertime, you've gotten your bees ready. They're going into summer. You're putting your honey supers on. You put the sponges in there too. Then I don't want to say it's a set it and forget it, but you're setting your bees up for success during the summer months when they're bringing in all that pollen and nectar. And then you're letting them do their thing. As the bees multiply during the summertime, the hive gets much bigger. Then you're kind of checking them as you're getting ready to pull those honey supers too. So, but you can just leave them. You can just leave those strips in there and just leave them. Yeah.
But it's a contact treatment. So when you're dribbling between the frames.
Correct.
You're getting contact going.
Correct.
And
Correct.
With
the sponges,
you're
yes.
You're hoping that all of the bees crawl across and move
Right.
around the
Right.
sponges. So is there an efficacy level that one achieves beyond the other? I mean, is the dribble more effective than the sponge?
Right.
The sponge is longer lasting?
Well, they kind of counteract each other that way, because the sponges are longer lasting. The bees have more of an opportunity to go across it, to be exposed to it, versus the dribble is only as long as you put that dribble in and they cleaned it off. So it's a give and take, but they're still experimenting, because again, none of this has been, we're just trading our boxes. So because so what happens is they're experimenting with those sponges to figure out really what's the end result, right? So they're still working on that. Yeah. A long time. Yeah, Randy's been, yeah. Oh, at least, yeah. All sorts of things. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're working at it. They're trying to.
Right.
Some get it, a lot on them, and then they rub onto other bees, and that's how that contact works. It works
Exactly.
that same way when you use thymol gel. They get in it, they touch each other, and then that gets on the others. That's
That's how it works. So let's see. So just some of the rotation. I know that Lynn talked about that. So a lot of times you'll switch it up from formic to maybe amprol to thymol to the oxalic, and that's really how you're going to set up your oxalic treatment, I guess. So, all right. So any questions? I want to pass around the mic so that we can hear everybody, I think. And I'm looking at the time. We're right on time. So are there any additional questions or anything? Any other thoughts about treatments? No? Okay. None? All right. Well, goodness. All right. Let me stop that sharing. Okay. So thank you everybody who stayed on with us. We have Barbara, we have Justin, Jessica and her family, Larry, Dave B, Russ, Brandon, Paul, and Brad, of course. So thank you so much. Any questions in the chat? I'm going to take a look here. Let's see. Mark was able to add some comments in there as well. I think we're good. Any other questions? No? All right. So we have, so as you know, our next meeting is going to be July 8th. We'll be here again in person and we'll be online. And our guest speaker is Randy Oliver. So he's going to be joining us through virtual meeting. So yes, so we'll be able to do that. So with that, all right, we're good. Thank you, everybody. All right. All right. Bye.